Picture it, 1950, and you're standing in the best store in Arkansas. Not in Little Rock, not downtown anywhere. In Newport, a small river town you'd struggle to find on a map. It belongs to a 32-year-old named Sam Walton, and if you walked in that Saturday, you'd never guess how close it was to disappearing. 5 years earlier, he'd walked in with almost nothing. A small loan, a borrowed idea, and a stubborn belief that low prices and better service could beat anyone. Now his little Ben Franklin franchise is outselling every other store in the chain, across 6 states. You'd see customers driving in from other towns just to shop there. Competitors studying what he's doing, still not figuring out how to copy it. By every measure you'd care about, sales, growth, reputation across the region, Sam Walton has made it. And in a few months, without warning, he's going to lose almost all of it. Not because the business fails, not because customers stop coming. You're about to watch the store taken from him for a reason that has nothing to do with how well he ran it. A reason buried in a piece of paper he signed years earlier and never thought twice about. He doesn't know it yet. Right now, if you watched him behind that counter, hands still smelling of fresh stock, you'd see a man who believes he's just getting started. He's right, just not the way he thinks. Rewind 5 years to 1945. You'd find Sam Walton fresh out of the Army, 27 years old, standing in front of a run-down Ben Franklin storefront in Newport with barely enough money to open the door. $20,000 borrowed from his father-in-law, $5,000 his own. Not exactly the start of an empire. More like a gamble most people would have talked him out of. If you'd walked into that store on opening day, you wouldn't have been impressed. Sam himself would later call it a real dog. Dusty shelves, a struggling location, a franchise formula that hadn't changed in years. In a town of about 3,000 people, most retailers would have written off as too small to bother with. But watch what he does next. Instead of accepting the standard markup Ben Franklin franchises usually charged, he starts hunting for suppliers who will sell to him directly, cutting out the middleman entirely. He cuts prices lower than anyone nearby dares to go, betting volume will make up for thinner margins. You'd see him out on the sales floor almost every day, talking to customers, watching what they picked up and put back down, learning what made them come back a second and third time. The math is simple, and it's the same math you'll hear across this channel. Sell things cheaper, sell a lot more of them, and the profit takes care of itself. Most competitors were still protecting their margins. Walton chased volume instead, and volume, it turned out, brought him to the end of his empire. Was the far bigger lever. It works. Within 5 years, sales climbed from around $80,000 to over $225,000. You'd be looking at the single top-performing Ben Franklin franchise across 6 states, beating out locations in bigger cities with more foot traffic, more money behind them from the start. Sam Walton didn't just build a good store in a small town nobody expected much from. He built proof, hard evidence in the ledger, that his instincts about pricing and people were right. Which is exactly what makes what happens next brutal. Here's the thing about Sam Walton in 1945. He was sharp about almost everything. Pricing, merchandising, customer psychology, the exact rhythm of a small-town Saturday afternoon. But you put a lease contract in front of him, and he signed it the way most people do at 27, with a young family and no money to spare, quickly, trusting the other side, and moving on to the work that actually felt urgent. That lease had his landlord's name on it, a local businessman named P.K. Holmes. And buried inside it was a detail that wouldn't matter for years. No renewal option. The rent itself was steep too, tied to a percentage of sales, which meant the better Walton store performed, the more he'd owe every single month. At the time, none of that felt like a real problem. You don't read fine print carefully when the store's still struggling to attract customers at all, let alone when it's succeeding beyond anyone's expectations. Now put yourself on the other side of that lease for a moment. You're Holmes, watching a franchise you rented out for a modest fee quietly turn into the top-performing location across 6 entire states. You're watching a young war veteran build something genuinely valuable. On your property, under your name on the deed, with your signature the only one that actually matters when the paperwork runs out. That's the contrast that ends up deciding everything here. Walton's version of success was building the best store anyone in the region had ever seen. Holmes's version of success was owning the building that store happened to sit inside. And when the lease finally came up for renewal, only one of those two versions of success actually held any real power in the room. Walton had spent 5 years mastering exactly how to run a store better than anyone else around him. He'd spent close to 0 minutes thinking seriously about who controlled the room he ran it in. That gap between operating brilliance and ownership leverage was about to cost him almost everything he'd built. The lease runs out in 1950, and Holmes does exactly what he'd quietly been planning. He doesn't renew it. He wants the location for his own son. And now that Walton has proven the store can be one of the best in the region, there's no real reason for Holmes to let anyone else keep running it. Least of all the man who made it that valuable. Picture yourself in Walton's position for a moment. 5 years of work. A store you built from a real dog into the top Ben Franklin franchise across 6 states. Customers who drive in from other towns specifically to shop with you instead of somewhere closer. And in a matter of weeks, none of it belongs to you anymore. You'd watch him sell off the inventory and fixtures. Everything physical he could still legally claim for around $50,000. A number that sounds significant until you remember what it doesn't include. The customer relationships, the reputation, 5 years of trust built one small transaction at a time. None of that transfers with a check. None of that can be packed into a truck and driven somewhere else. Here's the part that stings hardest, though. You'd see it in how people around Newport start treating him differently once word gets around that he's leaving town for good. A supplier who once drove out personally to court his business, offering better terms just to keep the account, now has nothing more to say than a polite goodbye at the door. A regular customer who used to greet him by name at the counter every week now just nods on the street, the same way you'd nod at any stranger passing through. To the town, he's no longer the man who built the best store in the state. He's just another franchisee who lost his lease, indistinguishable on paper from other small business owners quietly packing up somewhere else that same year. At 32 years old, with a wife and young children depending on him, Sam Walton is starting completely over. Not from failure exactly, he'd proven undeniably that his instincts about pricing and people worked. But from having nothing left to show for those instincts except a bank check and a lesson he'd never let himself forget again. You don't walk away from that loss unchanged, and Sam Walton didn't. You'd expect a man who just lost everything to take some time, grieve the store, maybe reconsider the whole industry, or at least the whole state. Sam Walton didn't have that luxury, and honestly, he didn't seem to want it either. Within weeks, he and his wife Helen are out scouting new towns across northwest Arkansas, looking for the next location to start over in. Helen wanted small-town living, closer to her own family. Sam wanted somewhere with good quail hunting nearby. You'd picture them weighing those two lists together against foot traffic, competition, and population, trying to find someplace small enough for a determined outsider to make a real mark. They land on Bentonville. Not a booming town, less than half the size of Newport, and far from the obvious choice on paper. Just a small Arkansas square where an existing variety store happened to be for sale. But watch what Walton does differently this time. He doesn't just lease the building, he buys it outright, using the proceeds from the Newport sale plus a loan from his father-in-law. And when the shop next door refuses to sell him room to expand, he holds out for a 99-year lease rather than settling for a short-term deal he doesn't fully control. In May 1950, he opens Walton's Five and Dime with a one-day remodeling sale. You'd notice something different this time if you looked closely at the paperwork behind it. He's not leaving that kind of leverage sitting in someone else's hands a second time. This is the moment worth sitting with, because it's easy to rush past on the way to the bigger story. Bentonville isn't Walmart yet. It isn't even close to it. It's just a small-town variety store, same as Newport was at the start, with no guarantee it works out any better than the last one did. But you're looking at the exact ground the empire eventually gets built on, whether anyone in town realizes it yet or not. Every choice Walton makes here, how he negotiates terms, how he treats suppliers, how he structures ownership, carries the scar tissue from Newport, built directly into it. He didn't just find a new town to work in. He found a genuine second chance to do it right. And this time, he wasn't going to let a piece of fine print beat him again. Here's the part most people skip when they tell this story, because it doesn't fit neatly into a highlight reel. Walmart doesn't open in 1950. It opens in 1962. That's 12 years, not a montage, not a training sequence, but over a decade of unglamorous, store-by-store work most viewers never hear about. You'd find Walton driving back roads across Arkansas, Missouri, and Kansas during these years, personally scouting one small town after another for the next location. Not delegating it to a real estate team. Not trusting someone else's judgment about foot traffic or population. Driving there himself, walking the main street, counting customers with his own eyes before committing to anything, and negotiating every lease personally. No repeat of Newport's fine print allowed. Inside the Bentonville store, he's experimenting constantly. Walton's Five and Dime becomes the third self-service variety store in the entire country, and the first one in the state of Arkansas. Customers browsing shelves themselves instead of waiting at a counter for a clerk to fetch every single item. It sounds completely ordinary now. In 1950, it was a genuine risk that could have just as easily failed. In a town of only around 3,000 people, you'd watch the numbers climb the same way they had in Newport. Before Walton bought the Bentonville store, it was doing about $72,000 in sales. Within the first year, that jumps to $105,000, then $140,000, then $175,000 the year after that. Same formula, same instincts, just applied more carefully this time. By the early 1960s, you'd be looking at roughly 15 stores running under Walton and his brother Bud, spread across 3 separate states. Each one built on the same math from Newport. Cut the price, sell the volume, deal with suppliers directly instead of through a middleman taking a cut. Here's the moment that almost stops the whole story cold, though. Walton takes his real idea, a full discount pricing store, not just a cheaper variety shop, straight to Ben Franklin's own executives, hoping they'll back it company-wide across every franchise location. They turn him down flat. You'd expect that kind of rejection to end things entirely, especially after everything he'd already survived once before. Instead, Walton decides to build the concept himself, entirely outside the franchise system, funding it with what 15 stores and 12 years of grinding had finally earned him. Nobody in Bentonville is calling this a coming empire yet. It's just a stubborn man still scouting towns personally, still negotiating leases himself, still refusing to repeat Newport's mistake. One store, one contract, one careful Saturday at a time. July 2nd, 1962, Rogers, Arkansas. You're standing in front of a brand new store with a name nobody's heard before yet. Walmart, short for Walton's Mart. Rejected outright by Ben Franklin's own executives on the discount store idea, Walton builds it anyway, funded by 15 years of stores, lessons, and one very specific piece of scar tissue from Newport. Remember that store from the very beginning of this video, the one about to be taken from him, the reason none of this felt guaranteed. This is where that loop finally closes. The same instincts that built the best Ben Franklin franchise in 6 states, the same discount math, the same obsession with owning your own terms instead of trusting someone else's, all of it walks through the door of this first Walmart. But watch what's different now compared to Newport. Back then, Walton was the outsider, chasing better deals from suppliers who barely noticed a small-town franchisee. Now you'd see it reversed. A banker named James Jones, a fellow Arkansan working at a bank in Dallas, personally arranges a $1 million loan to help fund Walton's expansion, then later helps arrange the financing for Walton to acquire an entire bank in Bentonville. People with real capital are the ones seeking him out now, not the other way around. He's no longer just the 27-year-old hoping a landlord treats him fairly. He's the one people now bring opportunities to, because his 15 years of numbers finally speak for themselves louder than anyone's doubts ever could. That's the real reversal this whole story has been quietly building toward. Not just a bigger store, but a complete flip in who holds all the leverage. Newport taught him that being good at your job means absolutely nothing if someone else controls the room you work in. Walmart is what happens when a person spends 12 straight years making sure that never happens to him again. By October 1970, Walmart goes public, selling its first shares to investors for $16.50 apiece. It starts trading on the New York Stock Exchange 2 years after that. Within a few decades, it's the largest retailer on the entire planet. But all of it starts here, in Rogers, with a name born out of a lease he lost 12 years earlier, and a man who refused to lose control of the terms a second time. So here's what actually happened. When you strip away the scale and the billions and just look at the mechanics of it, a man built something genuinely excellent in a town of 3,000 people, and it got taken from him. Not because he failed, not because customers stopped showing up, but because he never asked who actually controlled the terms he was operating under. That's worth sitting with. Whatever you're building right now, you can be genuinely great at your job, your craft, your business, and still be one signature away from losing all of it if you never check who holds the real leverage in the room you're standing in. Walton's talent didn't protect him in Newport. His contract did the deciding for him, and he hadn't read it closely enough to know that until it was already too late. What changed wasn't his work ethic or instincts. Those were already excellent back in 1945. What changed was that he started asking a different question before every single deal he made after that. Not just will this succeed, but if it does succeed, who actually benefits and who has the power to take it away from me later? That one shift in thinking is the quiet thread running underneath everything from Bentonville's 99-year lease to the bank loans and financing that eventually funded Walmart itself. You don't need to be building a retail empire for this lesson to apply directly to you. Maybe it's a business partnership without clearly defined terms. Maybe it's a lease, a contract, an agreement you signed quickly because the relationship felt more important than the paperwork at the time. Newport is a reminder that the paperwork matters just as much as the relationship. And sometimes, honestly, it matters more. So here's a question worth actually sitting with for a second. Is there an agreement in your life right now, professional or personal, that you've never actually sat down and read closely? Drop it in the comments below. You might genuinely be surprised by what you find once you finally take the time to look. If stories like this one, about the real, unfiltered moments behind big financial outcomes, are genuinely useful to you, there's a lot more of this coming on this channel. Consider sticking around for the next one. There's always another lesson hiding behind the highlight reel.